Okay, hello everybody. I am Larry Sprung of Mitlin Financial. I am the president and founder of Mitlin Financial. We are a wealth management firm in Hauppauge, New York. Thank you so much for joining us today. We wanted to host this webinar about college in the new normal because of coronavirus and everything that's going on. Certainly going to have an impact on the process and to those who are currently enrolled. And one of the things that we do at Mitlin is we work with our clients talking about both the financial aspects of college planning, but also the non-financial. It's a dual decision. You need to be saving and thinking about saving money for this event. At the same time, there are a lot of non-financial aspects to college planning. So what I wanted to do was just share with you real quick my own personal story and how Hans and myself had met. I have two kids. I have one that is currently a junior, finishing up his junior year in high school, and one that is finishing up 8th grade and entering high school. And I guess last year it was clear that we had to start the process for my oldest, who was a sophomore at the time. And the college process has changed significantly since my wife and I went to school, and we didn't feel confident and comfortable enough with what was going on in the public system to get the guidance that we needed to help my son and us make the right decision. So we engaged Hans last year, which was a fantastic move, and he has started working and is continuing to work with my son through this process. And I will tell you this, based on the new normal, I am over the moon that we engaged him, because this process, I believe, just got a little bit more difficult. And having a person like him on our side has been a huge help, and I know will be continuing to be a big help. So we wanted to bring them to you today to help you with those non-financial aspects of the college process. If there are questions regarding the financial aspects of it, you could always get in touch with myself at Mitlin Financial. Visit mitlinfinancial.com or give us a call at 844, the number 4, Mitlin, and we'd be more than happy to help. So let me give you a quick intro to Hans if you don't know who he is and what he does. Hans has transformed the lives of college-bound students for many years, helping them to shape their future and, more importantly, their life ahead. It doesn't just end at college. That's the start. Hans has saved parents tens of thousands of dollars by getting them engaged with a knowledge-based strategic plan. He identified the CollegeLogic effective strategies to help families get outcomes they desire without bankrupting the family bank. He's an advisor, mentor, speaker, and author, and he's here today to share crucial strategies specific to the changing world of college, which is the world on tilt. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce Hans, and please remember, use the chat, use the Q&A. I'm going to be monitoring it. Let's make this a valuable use of your time. And without further ado, Hans, I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Larry. I appreciate that. I appreciate you doing this. Happy to have everybody on. We have a great audience today. That's exciting. People from all over the world are here. There's nothing that can warm my heart more than to get people involved and engaged in this topic. You know, Larry, we met each other a little over a year and a half ago. The process has changed tremendously just in this year and a half's time. Forget about when you went to college, which might have only been about 20 years ago or 25 years ago, the young fellow that you are. But going forward, things are going to be so much different. For the first time, Larry, I can get excited for a parent of a 5th or 6th grader thinking about college ahead, rather than being scared to death for them.
Agreed.
So the tilt that we're going to talk about is not a tilt in which I'm going to be bashing colleges. So I don't bash colleges. Everybody knows I love colleges. I know the great things that they've done for the last 10 or 15 years with broader degrees and internships and research projects and study abroad opportunities. They've really done a lot of tremendous things to stay up with the times. Unfortunately, though, for them, I think it's caught up with them. And what's caught up with them specifically is we're just going to take a quick nosedive right into this. And even if you can't read it too closely, that's okay. The point's going to be clear real quick. Here's a financial award package to one of my families. And all you have to do is zero in on this number down here. Estimated cost of attendance, $86,000. That's $86,000 a year. Larry, we now have at least 20 colleges that have breached the $80,000 a year mark when we're talking about all-in cost, tuition, room, board, and fees, by the way. And then when you add, additional expenses like travel and things like that, all of a sudden you're up at 85 or 90,000. You could easily be at $350,000 now, looking ahead to the next 4 years. But this was a month ago. This was a month.
Hans, that's 86,000 just year one. Year two, it's probably going to increase again, right?
If things were normal, and we're going to hope that we're going to try to bust this normalcy pattern. If things were normal, this school would hit 100,000 by the junior year for this student.
Right.
So maybe they're going to get hit by this like everybody else. So maybe that normal pattern may finally cease. We'll see. But anyway, $80,000 a year. Larry, in a conversation we had a couple of days ago, you mentioned after-tax dollars. You're in investments. How much does a family have to make to pay $80,000 a year for college?
A lot.
Like the first 120,000 is going to just go to college. So that's not sustainable. And so whatever tilt we have is going to be a very welcome tilt as far as I'm concerned. All right, let's just jump right in. So nearing the end of April here, every year April is a big month for me. It's an exciting month. It's when college seniors are making decisions, but it's a tough month too, because we're negotiating financial packages. We're trying to get improved packages. Parents get frustrated, and the colleges haven't historically responded that well. And parents, in what they perceive as their obligation to their child to do whatever they have to do to make college work, they acquiesce to the college, and they've been all too willing to pay the big price. I call that the bankruptcy cliff. Every April for the last many years, I've spent the month of April talking people off the bankruptcy cliff. Well, this year, Larry, I haven't had to have that conversation once. Everybody is very open to this discussion. Nobody wants to get near that cliff. People are not getting within 500 feet of that bankruptcy cliff. My conversations with the seniors that I've been working with have been much more enjoyable, much more productive, and yet at the same time, they're still very difficult. And they're very difficult because of the times and everything else that goes into it. So they're hard conversations, but I like the fact that they've gotten more realistic in terms of, let's say, the financial affordability of this big decision called college. All right. You gave me a good introduction, so I'm just here to say Hans Hanson here. I've been doing this for 15 to 20 years now. I'm an author of a couple books, spoken in front of 40,000 people, and been featured in many national journals over the years. So just wanted to throw that out there. And let's now do the big head dive. And let's just pause, put life on hold for 30 minutes here if we can, and think about what we're talking about here. College normal, the way that it was. I call it, welcome to the grand illusion. The grand illusion of college, the prestige, its name, its ranking, its status, maybe its worth. This illusion has all been a part of the college plan and strategy. Their plan and strategy to get you, the parents, to buy what it is they have to sell. So they've worked hard to create this parents have bought into it more in the last 10 years than ever before. And that has become the normal. And that is what has allowed the price of colleges to continue to climb up into the stratosphere of $80,000 a year.
They really are great marketers, aren't they?
Tremendous. Larry, they run a business and they market their business so much better than the rest of us. We all wish, and you do a great job, but believe me, we all wish that we could be as good at it as they are. They are masters. All right. Now, the college normal, the way they want it to remain, they're going to want it to remain. Just like the NFL is holding its draft tonight, they're acting like nothing's going on, and they're going to hold on to their business model with a death grip if they have to. Well, so will college. So college will, the way they want to remain is this. For the last several years, what have we done? We apply to be their customer. We anxiously await their approval, anxiously, really, with anxiety. Oh, we celebrate wildly their acceptance. Let's post it on Facebook and let's let the world know. And then we feel privileged for their acquaintance. Enough so that we are just we're willing to pay their price. That's how it's gotten to where it is today. That is why the cost of college in the last 10 years has doubled to where it is today. All right. Now, why doesn't this work like buying a house? Larry, even if you go to a state university school and pay $100,000, or you go to a top level private school and pay $300,000, no matter what, it's a lot of money. And no matter what, if you make that amount of investment in anything else, you're going to do a lot of due diligence.
Hans, it's that's a great point, and I've had clients specifically say to me through this process that they don't understand how, and this is along the lines of the analogy of the real estate, but people buy a $40,000-$50,000 car and they're checking out reviews and checking out maintenance and researching it to the hilt. For a $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 purchase. But when it comes down to a child's education, in many instances, they're not doing that same level of due diligence, which is mind-boggling.
And it's not even close. So we're going to get into that a little bit here. So we know when we buy a house, there are a lot of checks and balances, especially if we're going to borrow money or have to go to a bank. But when we buy a college, it's like the family bank. There are no checks and balances. So let's put it in these terms. How does a family bank work? Where are the checks and balances? You the parent, us as parents, we run the family bank without having any outside oversight approvals. We operate under the premise of this illusion. And without the oversight, so that we buy this thing called college. And parents have been buying this thing called college without doing your diligence, without having market evaluations, without doing inspections, without even considering credit limits, without even testing the end game. Like when you buy a house, Larry, you check out the neighborhood and you think, well, maybe if I sell the house in 10 years, what kind of value am I going to get in that, right? Nobody buys a house otherwise. Well, how about doing that with a college? And when you buy a house, we the buyers are in control of the offers. Mm-hmm. And if we make an offer and it's not accepted, what do? We move on to another house. We don't like to buy under duress and emotional pressure. But when it comes to college and our children, then we as parents do buy these things under duress and emotional pressure, and the colleges know that. They know a lot more about parents than we might even know about ourselves. So let's move right on and just put it out there that said, pow, that's backwards. You wouldn't buy a house that way. You wouldn't buy a car that way. And frankly, Larry, I don't buy a $15 or $16 cheeseburger that way, right? We buy a cheeseburger. I tell them exactly how I want it, crisp bacon and everything else. And we inspect it, and it better come out good, right? If we're going to pay $15 or $16 for it. So I've been challenged for several years now to get parents to look at buying college much more like buying any of these other items. And you mentioned a car, $40,000 car. When you don't get the deal you want, what do? You walk off the dealership, you go to the next one, right?
Right, sure.
That's what people need to do with colleges. You don't get the deal you want, go to the next one. We only have one college to buy. They have to fill thousands of seats.
Right.
We need to have it viewed and approached that way. All right. So when we buy things like college, and if we bought houses, we'd have the same thing. But if we buy things like college that way, then it's way too often that choose the wrong college, the wrong major, you get the wrong outcome, you deplete the savings. You see it all the time. People incurring high debt. They're compromising their retirement. And our dear friend Chris, who's on the phone call right now with 3 children, 2 in college and 1 approaching, we can't let him compromise this retirement that he's worked, 30 years plus to get to. So the undesired result is that the national average time it takes to graduate in a 4-year degree is 5.5 years. That's the national average, 5.5 years. And I'm certain of one thing: nobody on this call today budgets an extra year and a half for their kids' college. What you don't hear, and you're certainly not going to hear it from the colleges who talk about 90% job placement rate. Come on, that hits the world of fake news right in the heart of that matter. Fake news, 90%. Who has a 90% job placement rate? Number one, there's not a college in the country that tracks it to begin with. They don't have a tracking department in the school. They don't have resources to track what the graduates are doing 6 months after. They might send out an email that says, hey, let us know if you're working. And yeah, that you can be working, but 50% of the last 3 years college graduates are underemployed, Larry. Sure, they might be working for $15 an hour for Amazon or Starbucks or something like that, but they're not working in a job related to their studies.
Hans, we have somebody that we know that their child went to school in Florida, and they graduated, came back to Long Island, and they were having difficulty finding employment. And they wanted to be in marketing, couldn't find employment, looking for a long period of time. They finally called the university, to their career development center and said, hey, I'm a graduate. Can you help me out? And they said, we would be happy to move back to Florida, because that's where most of our company connections are. But up in New York, it's very difficult for us to help you.
And they're not motivated or incentivized to help. There's no money in it for the college for them to commit resources to that initiative. All that's got to change, Larry. That's the tilt and college in the new normal. All that has to change. All right. So let's keep moving. So rather than us worshiping the college and celebrating their approval of us, how about if we flip it upside down? They need to accept you. They need to accept you, the family, you, the student. They need to celebrate you. They need to feel privileged to have you. And we're starting to see that, Larry, just starting to see that in the last week with emails that are being sent from colleges to students. The tone of voice has changed dramatically just in the last week or 10 days. We have several people on the call today, parents of seniors, who have started to experience this in the last 2 weeks. So that's a nice shift.
So everybody, before Hans starts into this slide, I'm just going to start a poll here. So you'll see this in the polls tab. We'd like you to make a vote. Do you see getting an online college degree as a viable option? Very simple, yes or no. If you could just take a minute, we'll keep it open. Click in whether your answer is yes or no. as far as, do you see getting an online college degree as a viable option? So while Hans is going over this slide, we'll give you the answers at the end of the slide.
So the reason we have that poll on this slide is this is where we want to, again, hesitate for a minute. And now we're going to start to talk about the shift. We're going to talk about the tilt. The college world is tilting. Well, so what's happening out there in the world of college? Well, one thing I can be certain about, Larry, come the fall semester, is student return rates will decline and will decline probably substantially. And Larry, think for a second. If your school had 10% of the student population were international students, how worried would you be right now about that 10% returning to school in the fall? And what happens if people can't get on planes come August 15th?
I would be pretty concerned. And if you look at our poll as any indication, 67% of folks said no, they would not see that as a viable option. And a third said that they would. So I think you look at that, and that gives you a great indication that if they're not able to get there and not really willing to do it online, it's really a recipe for disaster, perhaps, for the college.
And even if 33% are willing to do online, that would be a catastrophe to the college business model. If 10% of the people viewed it as a viable option, it would be troubling times for the colleges. And I'm sure that at least 10% across the country do. Another thing that we're going to see, freshman enrollments are down. People are not making deposits. Here it is. Larry, it's April 23rd. It's 8 days before the deadline date. What have a lot of colleges done? Like 400 or 500, they've extended the deadline date a month to June 1st. And they positioned it by making it sound like they're doing you, the family, a favor. Oh, we don't want you to be burdened by our deadlines. We've extended the deadline date a month. Well, guess what, Larry? If they had their full enrollments filled, they wouldn't have a need to extend that deadline.
Agreed.
They don't do any favors for us. They're trying to protect their business model. I understand that. But freshman enrollments will be down. We will get, for the first time, Larry, data in 4 months or 5 months, freshman no-show rates. People who made deposits and no-show. So they made a deposit. They thought that they could afford this school, whatever. They thought they could live in New York and go to school in California. They're not getting on a plane and they're not driving. Let's just say. Freshman no-show rates will skyrocket. That's a great concern to colleges because they don't know how to judge that or how to plan for that.
Absolutely.
So we're having all of our students, it's coming up in a few minutes, but we're having all of our students and families challenge colleges right now on what their tuition refund policies will be come the fall. Now, we know this, Larry. For the spring semester, I don't know of a single college that's offered a tuition refund for converting to an online platform. We do know that they've issued refunds for unused dorm rooms and food plans. That's right. Automatic. So they've held on to their money for the spring semester. And in all of our conversations so far of my family's talking with colleges, they all say right now, oh, no, we're not going to have a refund policy if we have to keep the students at home. That's what they're saying right now. But I think that that's going to change. Colleges will have to have a tuition refund or a tuition reduction policy if the students are not allowed to return to campus in the fall. All right. And online study as an alternative is getting validated. Where it might have been 1/10 of 1% 2 months ago. If it's 5% today, that's a big number. And if it is 5%, and I would say it's well over 5%, then that will mean fewer kids will attend college next year. And if 5% fewer kids attend college next year, there's going to be a big fallout in the world of colleges. There's too many colleges right now, and there won't be enough students to go around. All right.
So we're going to have another poll here. If you look in the poll area, how willing are you to pay full tuition if your child was told to stay home and take online classes? So you have three choices. No, not. I'd rather pull them from school or take a year off, which was actually a question by somebody, which we'll get to in a little bit. Somewhat, if I believe to be only for one semester, or totally willing, I don't see I have a choice. So talk a little bit about that, Hans, and we'll see
We're going to have choices. That's the whole key right now. So a year from now, people would have said that. Today, as responsible parents, we will have choices. That's our obligation to ourselves. That's the first thing, is accepting the obligation we have to ourselves. Okay, so that we're talking about the tilt now. Parents, so you have these factors that the colleges are dealing with, uncertainties. They really are running scared right now. And now, from the parent perspective, the buyers, right? The parents are the buyers. So parents are no longer willing to pay full price for the child to be at home. You know, I did my own poll of 30 parents of college students a couple of weeks ago, Larry, on a scale of 1 to 10. Every single person said 1. Their willingness to pay full price next semester if their child is told to stay home.
So, Hans, yeah, our answer to our poll, I guess, is we had a pretty much split, couple of totally not, totally willing, but pretty much split between I'd rather pull them to take a year off, or somewhat if I believed it was only going to be for one semester. So we have a pretty, simple divide there.
And Larry, we've worked hard with people for a couple of years, like with your son, Zach. A year from now, we will have worked together for 2.5 or 3 years to get to a point, which I am right now with so many families, but it might not play out the way that we've worked towards, and we have to have an open mind about it. There has to be options. It's a perfectly good option to take a year off and obviously do something with that year. But if we have to wait a year, the coronavirus, if it tells us we'd have to wait a year, then that's not a bad option. So anyway, parents are no longer willing to bankrupt themselves over college costs. They've been willing in the past. I don't think they're willing today. They're not willing any longer to just proceed ahead in blind faith that this is going to turn out okay for them, because it's not. You can't proceed ahead in blind faith of the college purpose. What is the college purpose? The college purpose is far different than our purpose is for college. You talked about price increases before. It's been routine, $5,000 a year. Where, Larry, can any of us increase our pricing 5,000, which has been, 6 or 7 or 8% in some cases?
I agree.
Where can we do that without announcing it, without asking for acceptance? But colleges have automatically assessed it, and parents have automatically accepted it, and parents can no longer be willing to just take a price increase. And the good news coming out of this is really we as parents should not be making investments like this size without having a definable expected outcome, which means something like a job, right, Larry?
Right. You would think.
Yeah. Okay. So this is, I mean, I really love this slide. This is the essence of it. Why are colleges tilting? Because for 20 years, Larry, this whole idea of the illusion, they have invested mightily into the show. They got to put on the show. Colleges have known if they can put on a good show, regardless of their educational programs. Nobody comes on campus and inspects the educational programs. They're coming on campus to evaluate the show, evaluate the glamour, assess the illusion. The illusion, recreation and living arrangements. Beautiful colleges that have invested hundreds of millions of dollars in fabulous sports facilities, in luxurious dorms, in gourmet cafeterias, and in campus beauty. Now, none of those investments are educationally related, right? They're all pertaining to the recreation and the living arrangement, the show, the glamour, and the illusion. And for 20 years, Larry, the colleges have outright counted on that streaming cash flow that they bought. They bought this cash flow with the investments. That's what they did. They were buying this cash flow that was coming in as a result of their investments. Well, when we look ahead to the next 10 years, Larry, I don't care so much about the college sports teams and the millions of dollars they pay to have sports teams. Obviously, your son's an athlete. My son was an athlete. My daughter is an athlete, but was not a college athlete. So we love athletics. Nobody can look at they cannot look at me and you, Larry, and not understand that we are big on athletics and we love them and we value them.
So Hans, let me ask you a question, and this doesn't have to be specific to athletics. Just in general, we have a question from somebody. Do you think that scholarships are going to be affected by this pandemic, athletic or otherwise? Do you foresee those being impacted because of what's going on at current?
Well, I see scholarships are on the rise right now. Right now, in the last 2 weeks, and right now for the next week, they're on the rise for people who ask for them. And it's because colleges need to. A scholarship, Larry, when we went to college, it was called a merit scholarship. It was kind of a merit award based on whatever our academics were. Mine, I did not get a scholarship. I think you probably got a big one, but that's beside the point. They were merit assessments, right? Today, they're not merit assessments. Today, they're sticker price discounts. It's the tool that the college has to incentivize or motivate a family to enroll. So right now, because enrollments are down, they need to use that tool, increase the scholarship to get people to submit their deposits.
Okay.
So scholarships are on the rise, and I know we have people on the call right now that have seen their scholarships increase $5,000 a year just in the last week. So $5,000 a year times 4, that's a $20,000 bang for that effort. So they've made these big investments, and people going down the road over the next 10 years, and parents of 5th and 6th graders, you're not going to be so concerned about sports fields and luxurious dorms and things like that. You're going to be concerned about quality education, streamlined education. I don't want 5.5 years as my average time for my child to graduate in 4 years. Maybe we're even going to blow up the 4-year graduation concept. And we're going to have different levels of graduation that get people specifically prepared and qualified for jobs. So streamline the education. Maybe the average college term 10 years from now, just maybe, Larry, I'm just throwing it out there, just maybe the average college term might be 3 years. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Right.
I'm not saying they're going to get a 4-year degree in 3 years. They're just going to trim off the unnecessary classes or courses part of a 4-year program, and they're going to stream it into a 3-year program. So that would be a whole new business model, but that's what I would like to see start to occur here over the next few years. All right. So that's why the colleges are tilting. They've made these massive investments, and they've counted on the cash flows to come in because of their investment. And I think in the next couple of years, I don't think people are willing to finance their investment in their campus beauty. All right. So everybody has a choice. And this is where people, I got to ask the question yesterday, do I think college costs are going to go down? And I said, you know what? It's going to be up to the parents. So this is where parents, as a collective group, a massive group, parents across America have an option. They can sit on the sidelines and just watch it play out and just take whatever happens, or they can participate, which means they play. They play to win. I want everybody here on the call to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback, play like a Super Bowl winning quarterback, to win this big game, the big game called college. You can't sit on the sidelines. You have to participate. So I'm going to share with everybody in a few minutes some of the ways in which we're going to participate.
And that brings us to our next poll here, Hans. We want to know, how willing are you to toughen up? Are you fed up and raring to go? Where do I get started? Not sure, seems right, but it may hurt my child's chances. Or not at all, I still want admissions to accept my child. So while Hans gives us a little insight here, we'll let you answer the poll.
And Larry, if we asked this poll a year ago, we would virtually get 0 responses for A, I'm fed up and raring to go, where do I get started? We would split the results between B and C, where people would always say to me, I'm not so sure. I don't want to compromise my kid's situation. And that would be split with people who would just say, no, I just want the acceptance. I just want the acceptance. I don't really care. That's the way it was a year ago. And we'll see what it's like sitting here today. So
yeah, so far, Hans, we almost have all the responses in, but it's almost split 50-50 between I'm fed up and not sure seems right. And we have a couple of stragglers that say they still want the admissions to accept their child. So I think it's pretty much A and B split almost.
So, Larry, that if we can picture that, that is the tilt, right?
Sure.
A year ago, it would have been a couple and half, and now it's a half and half and a couple. That is a very meaningful poll result, and I love that because that is the way it has to be. Okay, so now for those of us who are fed up and we're raring to go, and for some of us that are not too sure, but I'm willing to hear, that's why I'm on the call this morning. What we're going to do here, Larry, for the next few minutes is I'm just going to share a couple of action items to do for each category of parents. So we asked in the beginning, if you're a parent of a college student or a high school student. So here's some nuggets of to-dos for each category of parent. So if you're a parent of a college student right now, so your son or daughter is a freshman, sophomore, or junior sitting at home doing online classes, and you're not really too sure what's going to happen in the fall because none of us are, then what you have to do is contact your college right now and ask them what their stay-home online study tuition rate is going to be in the fall. You got to ask them. They need to be put to this little test. They need enough people to say, hey, I want to know what your stay-at-home online study tuition rate is going to be in the fall. Because that is what people fear, is that the people will stay home. If they're directed to stay home, then and they're not going to be willing to pay full price. So I want every parent call up the school and ask them this question, and be prepared to object to their response. Be prepared for them to say, well, no, we haven't really thought about that yet, and we don't really have a stay-at-home online study tuition rate figured out yet. And then I would just say to them, well, as soon as you get one figured out, make sure I'm first on your list to call. So
Right.
that's just, we're being pleasant, but we have to protect our interests. So that's just toughening up a little bit. And for parents of college students, quit sitting back and waiting for your kid to graduate and thinking that your kid's going to come, go out and get a great job, because some do. But what we have to do right now as parents of college students is really define what your desired outcome is and create an option plan for getting it. Because it might not be to return to that same school that you paid $40,000 or $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000 a year this past year to do. You might not be able to do it. Larry, I don't have to tell you, but we have plenty of people on the call today whose incomes have been greatly compromised and sacrificed over this last couple of months, and it affects people's affordability.
Sure.
To send their kids back to the same school. So define the desired outcome. You got to do it as a family, and you have to get together with your son or daughter and say, it may not turn out the way we've all planned it. We may not be able to send you back to college in the fall. We need to have an option plan because, Larry, we don't know how long this is going to go on. And even if the governments give us permission to move around, doesn't mean that everybody's going to be willing to move around. So we don't know the length or the extent of this. So we have to create an option plan right now. And we have to just do that because up until now, this comment I have in the bottom, colleges protect their business model with greater ferocity than parents have done historically to preserve their own family finance. Now, that's a tough thing to swallow, but that's been the truth. And colleges have known that. Well, we can't let colleges protect their business model with greater veracity than we're going to protect our own best interest.
Great.
That's part of the tilt. Now we go into parents of high school seniors, even if you've made a deposit.
And for high school seniors, we have a question here, a poll. How willing are you to seriously consider a different course of action than you thought was possible 2 months ago? A, I'm not at all. I'm committed and will support my child no matter what. B, we don't know what things will be like in August, or most definitely we're rethinking our entire position. So, yeah, this is a very big time for these high school seniors, Hans. So tell us what you're recommending at this point.
Well, thanks, Larry, because it is. And again, April 23rd, May 1st is right around the corner. Deadlines are coming up, things like that. Well, some people have made a deposit. Okay, well, we can't undeposit. They've made a deposit. If you've made a deposit, consider making a second deposit to another school. Now, people have said to me for 10 years, Larry, oh, that's not right. That's not fair to the colleges. And I've said, I'm not worried about being fair to the colleges. I'm worried about you protecting your best interests. And when you make a second deposit, it's like an insurance policy, and we all have insurance policies somewhere along the way in our life. It's an insurance policy because we don't know. You might have made a deposit on this idea that you're going to go to this $50,000 or $60,000 a year school, and you might not be able to afford it come then. And maybe the better option come August will be to stay local at the local state university or the local community college. So we have to consider a second deposit. Sure, we lose the deposit. We lose one of them. We don't get deposits back, but it's a little insurance policy just to protect your personal interest come the middle of August. And if you haven't made the deposit yet, just don't rush. And Larry, every senior I've worked with, we've made the deposits before April 23rd.
Well, the good news is, Hans, about 2/3 of our folks are saying that they are willing and seriously considering because they don't know what things will be like come August. About 10% said they're totally committed to what they're doing. And about 25%, most definitely, they're rethinking their entire position. So I think a lot of the people are on the same wavelength as you. And I think the option of that second deposit is probably a great idea.
And just think, Larry, I have students who go to school in California. Let's say they're from the East Coast. Well, maybe mom isn't ready come August 15th to put them on a plane. Maybe dad is not willing to get in the car and drive them. Maybe they need to stay home for a semester or stay home for a year and do something else. So that is the benefit of having options. We don't know what August 15th is going to bring for us. We owe it to ourselves to protect our interests.
Agreed.
Now, might sound a little bit silly, but if I was going to make a deposit at a school today, Larry, I would call them up and say, look, I'm ready to make a deposit. I just want to know what your deposit refund policy is, because I don't know that I'll be in position 2 months from now to carry this out. So, hey, I'll make the $500 deposit, but what's the refund policy in case I have to back out of it? Now, they're going to say we don't have one. I understand that. But you got to ask the question anyway. And we want to know what the fall tuition policies are going to be if our kids have to stay home. We want to ask right now additional scholarship dollars. We also want assurances. For the first time, Larry, we have a little leverage here. I say, if I'm going to make a deposit, I'm going to say, I'll make a deposit. You have to give me assurance that there's not going to be any price increase. I'm not willing to pay an extra $5,000 next year or $10,000 next year to send my kid back to your school. I want assurances that either my scholarship will go up equally, not proportionately, but equally as to the increase in the cost of college, or that we're locked in at this price. Okay. So the point is we have to secure a viable alternative. We have desired outcomes. We dream. We need to do this. We need to pursue our dreams. Hey, look, I'm an idealistic. I want ideal outcomes. But there's nothing ideal about the world today, but there is a world today that we can still dream in, and we need to pursue that. But we have to have viable alternatives. And in the end, we got to just protect our interests. Now, believe me, when we call colleges, here's a big point, Larry. In our emails and our phone calls to colleges, all my families are very compassionate with them. Our first 4 or 5 questions are, how are you? How's your family? How's the community? How are things going? What do you see coming up in the next couple of months? We have to show compassion. I mean, we're compassionate people. And we have to show compassion to them. I'm not trying to railroad them into anything. I care for them. We show them compassion, but we just don't compromise our interests. That's all.
Right.
So we just have to hold that fine line where we protect ourselves and we're ready to do something different come August. Okay, that's parents of high school seniors.
So for those of you with juniors or underclassmen, we want to know how do you rate your high school for the quality and organization of their online study program? A lot of these kids who are enrolled in high school have moved to online because they're not able to be. Poor, average, or very good. I think, I know how I would vote in my own situation, but I'm curious to see where you all think. So what do we do if we have juniors like my son?
Well, Larry, I work with these kids every day. I know how people feel. I know how the kids feel. I know how the parents feel about their high school's readiness or preparedness or organization for this online study of theirs. I know of dozens of kids who openly tell me, Larry, oh no, I get up at 12 o'clock these days. 12 o'clock. When did you get up when you had to go to school? Oh, 6 o'clock. So how come 12 o'clock on a school day is acceptable? Whoa, I don't have anything to do. I don't have any classes. I have a little homework. I'll do my homework when I wake up. Anyway, that's a whole nother topic we'll discuss.
Well, we have the results. Basically, we have about 44% are saying average, about 25% poor, and about 31% are saying very good, which is actually better than I expected, I guess.
Well, because everybody has a different standard for what it should be, and they're judging based on their standard and what they see, and that's perfectly okay. So, but as parents of high school juniors, this is your opportunity as a collective group to take affirmative action, to recognize as we get ready to go through this process, the need to secure quality options, to have patience. Don't be in a rush to make a Facebook page. Just like with your own son, who might not have been too willing to look at the state university 10 miles away from home 3 months ago, he's going to be more willing to do it today. We have to secure quality options. Now, we're going to still carry out the admissions and application strategy to the full tilt come a couple months from now. It all begins in July, August, and September. But when I talk about introducing quality options into the mix, I'm going to introduce quality options that were not readily accepted 6 months ago, but today they will be. and it is the local state university. I will require every student to apply to the local state university. It might be the local one, might be a small one, might be 5 miles away, as opposed to the big state university. Let's say, like in your case, Binghamton, that might be a couple 100 miles away. If you live in Long Island, I want you to apply to one of those Long Island state universities in case you got to stay at home to save the money, whatever, secure the low cost, stay at home, save the money. I want to introduce those kind of options.
Hans, I want to make sure we have time for questions and we're respectful of the hour that we've allotted. So if we could just move them along, because I do have a couple of questions in the queue that have not fit in nicely that I want to make sure we address.
All right. So the end of this story is don't let your ambitions go to sleep. Okay, all other students, we'll just bypass this a little bit. It's time to get involved. It's time to understand better the world that's ahead of you and to participate and seeing it, take its course. So let's go to
well, actually, right along those lines, Hans, you had something on there about the SATs and ACTs, and we have a question that came in with the cancellation of the SATs and ACTs recently. What's going to happen if the student doesn't get an opportunity to take it again?
Well, a little bit of good news is they may not take it in the formal setting that they did previously, but starting either in August or September, SATs are going to be offered online. And so they will have a chance to take it. And we can't let the current state of affairs be our reason for doing poorly on it. So we have to prepare, and there's going to come a time in which the students are going to take the test. And it's our job as parents and students to be ready and get the best score we can. Now, we do know, Larry, there are already a lot of schools that waive the SAT requirements, and there will be more schools that waive the SAT requirements. However, no one gets big scholarships if they do not submit SATs. So waiving the SAT requirements by a school is a school policy to increase the number of applicants.
So we also have, actually, I have two questions that flow into what you just said. One is somebody's asking, can juniors in high school start applying for scholarships if they're not attending college until September 2021? Is that possible?
No, you don't really apply. The scholarships we talk about are the university-based scholarships, the merit scholarship awards that come out of the admissions office, and you don't apply for them. We submit applications, and through the application process, the admissions process, we do what we can to earn scholarships, but it's not something to apply to in advance.
Okay, so that when you're talking about scholarships, you're just talking about specifically from the university themselves.
Yes, because those are the ones that can be big, and they're the ones that are renewed for 4 years.
Right, and then we had another question, which if a lot of kids take the 2021 year off, as an option, how do you foresee the admission process for spring of 2021? It would probably become more competitive due to the increase of applications from all the people that deferred. How does that affect things?
Well, for that particular year, like spring 2021, that will come from acceptances people have today in which parents have asked to defer. They defer their acceptance one semester, or they defer it a year, so they don't have to go through the application process again.
So there's not going to be a whole onslaught of more people applying for that period of time. It would simply be the deferrals from the previous semester.
That's right. Now, if you didn't create that option and you were a parent of a senior right now in Long Island and you wanted to apply to SUNY Stony Brook, well, sure, that application process is closed for the fall, but it's open for the spring. So if you hadn't created that as an option and you wanted to consider that as an option, then now's the time to submit an application for a spring semester enrollment.
Right. Well, let me go through here. We got a handful of questions. What about employers? How do they view the online student or a graduate from a non-accredited school? Will an employer take an Ivy League grad over an online grad?
Well, that's the age-old question that it was like an Ivy League grad over, let's say, University of Phoenix. And University of Phoenix is a quality online program, but your diploma says University of Phoenix. If you take an online program, let's just say through Penn State World Campus, number one, it's $15,000 a year, not $50,000. $15,000 a year after 4 years, $60,000. You get a Penn State University diploma. It doesn't say online. No, it doesn't. Nothing says online. I mean, you can talk about it with somebody, but I don't think employers are going to worry so much about what the diploma looks like. They want engaging, intelligent, expressive, qualified, prepared young adults ready to help them run their business.
There also have been a lot of articles. I don't know how much truth there is to it, but there's been a lot of recent press about because of the college dilemma, the prices, the debt that's been built up, that there is this drive that more employers may not be looking at college diplomas as heavily, perhaps even going forward, because of the cost strapped associated with it.
And or the college diploma has been watered down a little bit. So it's not the diploma that's going to get anybody a job. It's the person. You got to show up and be able to contribute. And so that's the challenge of the times, is take these young people and get them engaged and expressive and thinking and understanding how they can contribute. Larry, for the last 10 years, everybody says, oh, I have my degree. I deserve a job. I deserve 60,000. I'm entitled to this. I'm entitled to that. People see that this gets right back to the beginning of what we started talking about, the illusion. It's the illusion parents have had that, oh, if I have this degree from this Ivy League school, that's going to entitle my child in some way. Well, let's blow up the illusion. Let's blow up the entitlement and understand that every child is going to be on their own to fight their way into this world as a young professional 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9 years from now. And it's not going to be based on the diploma. It's going to be based on that person's skills, abilities, and qualities and knowledge.
So listen, if you have to go, I understand. We do have a couple of more questions that I am going to pose to Hans, so we have them here and answered, so we don't ignore anybody. But if you have to leave, we appreciate your time. But I am going to continue with a few more questions. So if you'd like to stay and hear them, feel free as well. So somebody has a question about the cost of college. Do you foresee the costs going up for juniors today because of things like maybe less international students, less scholarship money? They're saying, this person is saying that, it seems like if you're willing to pay full price, you may be in a better position to have kids attend preferred schools. Do you foresee that changing because of that decline in enrollment, perhaps?
I see colleges trying to hold on to that concept. And those are going to be the self-proclaimed elite 50 schools, let's say. But I see everybody else fighting for a position. And Larry, is there an advantage to somebody whose $80,000 a year college cost doesn't matter to them? Well, that might find a few people in a preferred situation with some colleges. But colleges would be very arrogant right now to try to hold on to their pricing model and to try to hold on to future price increases.
Right.
Or along the way, they have to participate in this challenging times that we're all experiencing. We're all feeling pain. No one is excluded from the pain. So colleges are going to try to be excluded, but in the next few months, they're going to find out that they're not, and they're going to have to adjust their policies. So I don't have a crystal ball on it, but I see that costs have hit a ceiling. Finally, I've been asked about this for 20 years, Larry. When are college costs going to hit a ceiling? I think they've hit a ceiling, And I think it's a 10-year process. I think things going to start happening in the next 1 or 2 or 3 years. It's a 10-year process for this tilt to go ahead and fall over and uproot the whole business model and get into a situation in which colleges become resource centers, focused on getting people prepared and qualified for jobs, because that's what people will be willing to pay for. They're not going to be willing to pay for the fancy sports fields and the new dorms, the new cafeterias. That's all fluff. College is going to have a hybrid of studies, Larry, where some it's called distance learning. They're going to master distance learning, where some are remote and some are live on campus. But one thing I think is for certain, Larry, I think dorm rooms are going to be at maybe half capacity for the next year or two. Cafeterias half capacity, classrooms half capacity. I don't know how it can be any different. And when that starts to happen, some colleges are going to shutter. Larry, don't be surprised. In the next year and a half, some colleges shutter. They can be colleges that you would least expect.
So I've also shared a handout with everybody as a giveaway from Hans. It's top 50 questions to ask on a college visit or in the college process. We also have a question, Hans. What about a senior who didn't apply to enough schools in preparation for the pandemic? Since you can't apply now, what would you recommend? Do you go to community college and get started right away and then transfer, or defer a year? What is the best course of action there?
That's like the best question, Larry. I'm glad you asked that, because one thing, you can apply to a state university. So if you're in New Jersey, apply to Rutgers online program. You can apply to Penn State online program. If you're in Florida, apply to University of Florida online program. For in-state residents, it's $5,000 a year. You could do that, but the deadlines for that are coming up, like May 1st or May 5th or May 10th for the online program. So I'm glad you asked that. Apply. It's a $50 application fee, and create that online study program as a viable low-cost option. That's one of them. And when the time comes, you will have a choice: enroll in the community college, or do the online study program, or sit out a year. And I'm not opposed at all to sitting out a year. You just have to do something constructive for the year. Larry, our society rushes kids through this educational system. They rush them through high school. They think everyone's ready to go to college 3 months after they walk off their high school graduation stage, in which most are not ready yet. And they're trying to rush their kids to graduate as a 22 or 23-year-old when we know they're going to work the rest of their life. Why rush into that? It's okay to take a year off, to be a year older, a year more mature, a year better ready to go into college. So a lot of families in that situation right now are looking at taking a year off. It's called a gap year, but I'm not talking about a year off sitting around on the couch doing nothing. But that is a viable option, and there's nothing wrong with starting college. And I have a student right now at Fordham. He's just completed his sophomore year of college. He did that coming out of high school. So now he's a 21-year-old, not a 20-year-old, finishing a sophomore year. He's got a 3.7 GPA. He was a 3.2 GPA student in high school, but he's more mature, more ready, more serious. So I think that's a viable option.
One last question. SAT, ACT. There's also been talk about those, more schools going test optional, where you don't necessarily have to take those exams to, be considered for admissions. What's your feeling on that? Is that something that students who are, in the process should take advantage of, or are they better off taking the exam and then still submitting it and utilizing that as a tool, whether it's online or actually in person, depending on how that shakes out?
Larry, it's a great question, because people have to ask themselves, why would college offer that? And it's never to do a family a favor. It's only to do themselves a favor. It's only to help support their business model. It gets more students to apply. It lowers their acceptance rate. It makes the perception of them being harder to get into, right? So that's a policy to support the college interest, not to support families' interest. Admission directors have told me over the years, Larry, it's a much lower acceptance rate and a much lower scholarship for kids who don't submit SATs or ACTs. So improve the likelihood of acceptance, and maximize your scholarship potential. You need a big score on SATs or ACTs. You got to be serious about it. And parents need to get tough on their own kids because their kids are not inclined to be sitting here studying right now. But what a great opportunity right now to study SATs 1 hour a day.
Right.
That would be a novel concept.
I agree. Well, listen, thank you, Hans. I appreciate all your knowledge. We all appreciate it. I thank everybody for attending. This was a very well sought after topic. I also thank you for your great questions. Just a couple of housekeeping. If you have more questions about the college process, the non-financial aspects, Hans is the person to reach out to, and he'd be more than happy to assist you. You can either reach out to him directly, which his information's on the screen, or you can reach out to me, and I'd be more than happy to connect you. If you have any questions about the financial piece, obviously, if your son or daughter is only a year out from school, there's very little that can be done, but maybe you have friends, family, or business associates that need assistance in that financial aspect. I'd be more than happy to have a conversation and assist them. Be sure you take the free handout. And then just as a housekeeping item, you will receive, if you registered, you will automatically receive a replay of the event. So you'll have that. It will also be stored on the Mitlin Financial website once it's available and ready. And then lastly, you will be receiving a survey. Please take the time. It's, I think, 3 or 4 questions. Answer it. If there are any other topics that you'd like to see us host one of these webinars on, please let us know, because we'll highly consider it and put it onto our agenda. So I want to thank Hans. Thank you very much for taking your time and doing this. And thank you everybody else for attending. And again, if you need us, feel free to reach out, and remember, make it a great day.
Thanks, Larry.
Thanks, Hans.